Good morning and welcome to another edition of United Way for Southeastern Michigan's What's the Word Wednesdays. My name is Courtney Howe, and today we are going to be talking about Proposal 2, or as it's sometimes referred to, promote the vote. No matter what we look like, where we come from, or what candidates we support, we all want safe, secure, and fair elections. Proposal 2 would enhance the accessibility and security of our elections and ensure that every eligible voter can have their vote counted without intimidation or interference. To share more about why we should be voting yes on Proposal 2, we are joined by Marge Freundl, a member of the League of Women Voters, LWV, of Michigan, one of the partners for Promote the Vote 2022. As a member of Grosse Pointe's LWV chapter, Marge worked on collecting signatures for Promote the Vote 2022 ballot petition. She serves as local LWV membership director, a member of the LWV Observer Corps, and a member of their local Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Marge is a registered nurse, retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs, but still working part-time as a healthcare coordinator and volunteer at Cabrini Clinic in Southwest Detroit. Marge earned her master's in nursing at Wayne State University in Detroit. She is a widowed mother of 3 and proud grandmother of 4. As a reminder, everyone will reserve the last 10 minutes for questions at the end. So please put your questions in the chat box on Zoom or into the comment section if you're watching on Facebook. Marge, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm here to talk about Proposition 2. And I've already had Courtney give us a brief introduction, so we can move forward on this page. I wanted to mention that Proposal 2, which is what it is on the ballot, builds on the success of 2018, the Proposal 3, and they called that Promote the Vote 2018. That led to no reason absentee voting in this state, expanded our voter registration capacity, and assured our right to a secret ballot and straight party voting, which had been removed by the Michigan legislature as an option for voters. So we now have straight party voting back. Okay. So what is Proposition 2? It will be on the ballot in November. What would it do? It's on a proposed amendment to the Michigan Constitution to add certain rights. And who is doing it? A broad coalition of organizations and individuals. And the partners are on the Promote the Vote website. But as I mentioned, the League of Women Voters is a partner in this and has been throughout the signature collection and certainly now. And what is needed? To talk the talk with friends, family, neighbors, and community about the importance of ensuring the vote as accessible and secure. And why should you vote yes on Proposal 2? First of all, it recognizes the fundamental right to vote without harassing conduct, so voters can be free from intimidation and interference. And we saw some of this, not so much in Michigan, but in other states in the last few elections. So we want to make sure that there's no fear of that. This is my favorite as a retired VA nurse, that it requires military or overseas ballots be counted if they're postmarked by election day. Even though military and overseas voters are a tiny fraction of the electorate, they made up less than 22,000 voters in Michigan in the last election. They represented 4.6% of those ballots were rejected compared to the average rate of rejection of 1%. Most of those rejections were due to them arriving after election day. So the change would allow for the counting of those ballots. And I'll show you the language when we get to the end. It provides the voters the right Excuse me, I have to minimize this. To verify their identity with a photo ID or a signed statement. This we currently have the privilege of doing in the state of Michigan, and it is in Michigan law, but there were attempts during this legislative session to take that away. And some of the feedback I've heard from people is that, why do we need this? You know, why do we need this new thing? Well, I went back and I did some research and I found that the opportunity to sign a statement goes back to 1954 in our state constitution and in state regulations. So this is nothing new. It's always been there. And I keep trying to reinforce that. So, okay. It allows voters to request an absentee ballot by mail for all future elections. So there was a piece of legislation introduced earlier this year that would require you to request every time that you want an absentee ballot, which is an extra step. So you can request one time and say, I always want to vote absentee. You can still not do that. You can arrive and vote. If you don't turn in your absentee ballot, you can arrive and vote on the day of election if you change your mind. You will receive correspondence like about a month before asking, do you want a ballot this time? And then you return that and then they automatically mail the ballot to you. It requires secure drop boxes and robust absentee ballot tracking. So here's just an example. We had a lot of drop boxes installed because of COVID and made voting more accessible, particularly for people with transportation problems. So, and there was proposed legislation introduced on this too. There are people who say, people need to vote in person. This is, you know, but we've always been able to have an absentee ballot. And generally you put them in the mail or you dropped them off at the city clerk's office. This is a secure drop box and it will allow for additional drop boxes based on the population. Okay, and it requires election audits to be conducted in public by state and county election officials based on established guidelines to promote accuracy and transparency. You may be aware that after the 2020 election, there were secret kind of audits arriving at clerk's offices up in northern Michigan and actually taking ballot boxes out of the county to hotel rooms. And this would clearly not be allowed. It really has not been allowed, but it clearly embeds this in the state constitution. And this also allows for 9 days of early in-person voting. And this is really a new thing in Michigan. So there have been allowances because of COVID. And I believe this year there was an allowance, although not all the clerks are taking advantage of it, but the legislature did pass, I think it's 2 days of early in-person voting. So if you don't get to a drop box, if you don't get to a mailbox in time, and a lot of people are worried about putting something in the US mail and the reliability, you can do in-person voting if that precinct has it established. And it allows for adjacent communities to share this process. So if it's too much of a burden for a small rural community, they may share with an adjacent community and open up an election site up to 9 days before the election. It requires canvassing boards to certify election results based only on the official records of votes cast. So we had a situation in Michigan where certain people got together and said, oh no, we're not accepting the actual votes cast in that community, so we're going to vote for this alternate person. So this would not allow for that. And how can you support These are just things from Promote the Vote 22. They do have a website. They are a nonprofit organization, so they're asking for donations, becoming a partner, share the posts, and encourage others to support. I think the main message that I would ask you to take from this is that almost none of this we don't have the capacity to do now. So what this is doing is assuring that no one can alter those rights that we have now. There are a few additional ones like the early voting that are newer, but the rest of it is pretty much the rights we have now. Oh, also the military postmark. So that is a new addition this year. Okay. I thought I had put the language in for the full. Okay. So, but we did put the links on, right, Courtney, for the references.
Yes, they are being put in the chat box as we go.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would encourage you to take advantage of those links. If you're not voting absentee ballot, it is kind of a long proposal. So, you know, read it before you get to the voting area. Any questions?
Marge, really want to thank you so much for all of the information that you shared with us today. You know, as an absentee voter and an election poll worker, I work for the Department of Elections in Detroit. Prop 2 will be a huge asset to our community, and I really appreciate folks like yourself that really go out and advocate for our rights to vote. So we're really excited for that. So again, everyone, I wanted to put a reminder to everyone. If you have any questions for Marge, and if you're on Zoom, please put in the chat box, or if you're on Facebook, put in the comment section. We do have our first question. How is the proposal different from the Promote the Vote initiative that was passed in 2018?
Okay, so in my earlier slide, I listed the things that 2018 accomplished. So those things are embedded now. They're done. These were additional issues that surfaced, and I might back up and mention that Promote the Vote 2022 met with the city clerks at the various precincts to find out what could be done to make voting better for the electorate or easier for the electorate. So the items that are in Promote the Vote 22 are in addition to what was approved in 2018, and they're putting those into language in the Michigan Constitution. So that's really, it's building on the 2018. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you so much, Marge. And I believe we do have a slide with that full language that we can share. I'm going to have my team pull it up for us here so you can kind of go through that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'll just leave that up maybe while questions are coming in, and then I can address it if there's any.
All righty. Thank you so much, Marge. We do have some more questions that's coming through. Another question, why does Promote the Vote 2022 amend the Michigan Constitution? Okay,
so I mentioned that several of the items in Promote the Vote 2022 are currently in existence in the state, but they're regulations or practices. And during this last legislative session, there were something like 32 proposed pieces of legislation introduced into the Michigan legislature to alter these rights. So, you know, they wanted to eliminate a number of these things. And so fortunately, either the governor has vetoed those or they haven't gotten out of committee or whatever. So hopefully they'll die the end of the session. But this would assure that none of those can be done if they're passed by the legislature. But this is embedded in the Constitution. And the only way then it could be changed is by a vote of the electorate.
Good to know. Thank you so much. I'm not sure. I don't think we have any follow-up with that one, but we do have some more questions. Will Promote the Vote 2022 impact voters' access to absentee voting? I know that you mentioned the 9 days of early voting, which was wonderful. So kind of part two to that is, will the election sites include election offices, or will this be precincts? So will the precincts be open for 9 days? How would that look if that, when this portion is passed?
Okay, so I kind of hear two questions here.
Yes.
One is the absentee ballot, which would be separate than the early voting.
Okay.
So the absentee ballot is what it is. The main change from Promote the Vote 2022 is that you will only have to indicate once that you want to be an absentee voter. So you won't have to go back. There were allowances for this in the 2018 changes, but this just secures it a little more firmly. The second thing about the early voting, now I did read an article or saw something on the news just this week. So I know in Detroit, they are planning to take advantage of the early voting. I know there's a couple other places that are doing it around Metro Detroit, but you'll have to check this fall anyway. But if this passes, that has to be considered for any electorate within a certain number of people that they have to consider opening that up and having additional days for early voting. And I guess the one thing I think of is maybe you didn't sign up for absentee voting. You were planning to go to the polls and you're called out of town for something unexpectedly, almost down to the wire before election day. This would allow for that person to go to wherever there's open voting in that area and vote before the election day.
Now, would that look different in different towns, cities, counties? So say, for instance, if the city or the township of West Bloomfield has a certain early voting structure, would that differ from different cities and towns, or would that be kind of county or statewide mandated?
It's my understanding that's left to that local community.
Okay.
And that's why they allow for particularly the small communities, because one of the concerns raised about Proposal 2 is the cost to the local precincts, and that allows them to collaborate together on that. So it will vary with the community.
Thank you. That's very informative. Thank you so much for that. So again, as we are looking to see how we're voting for next year, please go to your local offices, go to your local municipalities, and really research on the ways that you can vote, everyone. We're talking about the security of the election. So how will Promote the Vote 2022 make elections more secure? Can we talk about the security of the vote?
Yeah, I think these are some of the strongest parts of Promote the Vote 22 because of some of our experiences we dealt with in 2020, and a lot of people questioning their trust of the election results. So the fact that we've got secure drop boxes are required, postage for absentee ballots so that people, if they choose to mail, they can US mail it. The counting of the votes, only election officials can conduct post-election audits. The canvassers have to certify the election based only on the official records of the votes cast. So those are all significant items to assure that the people's vote is counted and is applied to the election.
Wonderful. Marge, thank you so much. A couple more questions for you. We have that's coming through. What is one thing you want our audience to leave with today about this proposal? So one thing you want us to leave with, and then how can audience members get more involved?
Okay, like I said, the main message, and if you can help communicate that, is much of what is in proposal 22, from my view, we currently have been able to do. This is assuring that we will continue to be able to do it without unilateral decisions by the legislature in Michigan to make those changes. So the 32 plus pieces of legislation, this will protect us against that kind of thing going on. And how can you contribute? The first thing I would say is, talk it up. I hope you support it and talk it up to others. And if there's any question at the website for Promote the Vote, there's a nice frequently asked questions page that you can just download and keep with you if any questions come up.
Wonderful. Well, Marge, again, we really thank you for your time today. And we've learned so much about the elections and voter rights and everything with Prop 2. So again, I urge everyone, November 8th, please exercise your right to vote. If you've not voted already, again, there's opportunities for you to vote absentee. Please do so. If you know your schedule is going to be busy on that day, like myself. So Marge, again, we thank you so much for everything that you share with us today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All righty, and so everyone, we do have more updates to share with you before we close out today's events. We've covered a ton of information today, and if you have additional questions or are looking for helpful resources for the November election, you can now visit our voter hub. Your vote is your voice, and we encourage you to get the facts to be informed, to be an informed voter. You'll find the link in the chat box. And that link is unitedwaysem.org/vote. As a reminder, for anyone in our community who may be experiencing a need, our 211 helpline remains available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We always maintain a running list of available services in the community and can connect you to the support that you need. You can also look up resources in our area by using our 211 resource database at unitedwaysem.org/211. One of the most frequent calls you receive to 211 is for help with utility payments. United Way's Utility Assistance Program has reopened for 2022 and 2023 as of October 1st. And we urge anyone who is looking for this help to apply as soon as possible. You can learn more on United Way's website at unitedwaysem.org/MEAP, MEAP, or call our 211 helpline. We will return for another What's the Word Wednesday in November. So please be sure to check our website for upcoming details. And that website is also included in the chat box as well. And that website is unitedwaysem.org/virtual town halls. Thank you to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon. Please, please, please stay safe. Continue to live united and go out and exercise your right to vote. Thank you all so much.